Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Houston Element Podcast. My name is Missy, and I'm your host. And today, I have the lovely pleasure to invite a professional who's worked in production for many years, worn lots of different hats over the years. We have today Miss Abby Kehr.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me on, Missy.
It's a pleasure to have you, man.
Well, I have been working in the field of theater production in some way, shape, or form for well over a decade, much longer than that, non-professionally. But I went to school for technical theater production at TSU, and I thought I wanted to be a stage manager until I realized I had a hard time sitting still. And I figured out that I liked making things, and I wound up as the properties studio manager at Theater TSU, and kind of fell in love with that, but did a bit of a detour after college. I joined Teach for America, and I taught at IATSE High School out west in Alief. For 5 years, and did that for a bit, but got to the point where I wanted to do something a little different, go back to theater. So I called all my contacts I made over just doing summer stock over the years, and sent a resume to this thing called IATSE. And IATSE is the stagehands union, and the local here in town is Local 51, and they picked me up and started sending me out, and I hung around and got my seniority number and started getting more and more work, and they're my full-time gig now. And so I've been working on and off with IATSE for since 2014, fall of 2014.
Wow, that's impressive, man. So, for those that are not familiar, can you explain what would be the difference in working like with a union versus, working independently, with a 1099 employee?
Yeah, sure. So I've actually done some of both. When I was starting out, I wasn't getting as many calls from the union at first, so I did do a lot of what's called freelance work. I was a properties designer with places like 80 Players, with the Houston Shakespeare Festival, did some work with HITS over in the Heights, and a couple other places around. But the thing about being a freelancer is you end up not having taxes taken out of the pay that you're given. So then it's up to you to figure out all of that at the end. And it ends up being a little more expensive from that perspective, or at least feels that way. And also, as a freelancer or an independent contractor, you don't have some of the protections that you have if you're working under a more set contract. So when I started working with the union, I really, really liked that there were contracts in place that made it very, very clear, here's how long you can work before you need a break. Here's how much is provided for a percentage going into healthcare, which that's something that certainly doesn't happen if you are a freelancer most of the time. And there's also a percentage that goes for continuing education within the local, and there's also a percentage that goes towards pension, which is another giant thing in support of working with a good employer or with a labor union. So the labor union is there to make sure that you're not taken advantage of, and to make sure that contracts are kept and they're protection for the workers, and it helps kind of level the playing field between employers and the workers.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So there's a lot of benefits, that they offer you that you wouldn't otherwise get as an independent contractor because you're basically reliable only for yourself.
Pretty much. So with working with the union, there's recourse for if something happens on the job site that isn't right. They also do a lot to make sure that the job site is safe. Whereas you don't have anybody necessarily looking out for you if you're an independent contractor. If you're an independent contractor and you get hurt, you're kind of out of luck. Whereas if you're working with the union, under contracts, there are stipulations of like, okay, there's workman's comp insurance, so you're able to get taken care of if you do get hurt.
Of course, of course. I mean, and these are things that you won't know unless, you look into it if you're smart or if you ask questions.
And working with a labor union, that's something that goes far beyond the theater industry, because there's unions in all different sorts of industries. There's the electricians have a union. There's Teamsters. There's also like public sector labor unions. And so it's not just the theater industry, but that's just the one that I have the most familiarity with.
And so, what are the kind of responsibilities of working in theater production? It's kind of like a daily gig for you guys.
Yeah, so the way things work with Local 51, which is the local of the labor union that I belong to with through IATSE, employers call the hall, and the office kind of acts like a hiring hall situation. So employers will call the hall and say, okay, I have this production coming up and I need 15 carpenters, 10 electricians, 4 sound guys, 6 prop people, and somebody that knows how to do video. And so then what happens is the union goes to its list, and because Texas is a right-to-work state, we have things organized based on by seniority number. You don't have to be a member of our union to work with us and to succeed. It's just kind of based on that seniority system. So the business agent looks at the list and kind of goes down the list and then populates that call based on what people accept of those calls. And so what that means is a lot of the time, especially when you're starting out, you don't know what you are doing from day to day. You don't know where you are working, and you might not know for how long. That call might say 4 hours, but guess what? That could turn into a 12. So it makes it a little difficult, especially when you're getting started before you get like used to the rhythm of things, to kind of plan your life. I've had the pleasure the last few years to work mostly with Houston Grand Opera. I'm one of their properties assistants. So what that means is if the opera is in season, I know I'm working. And so I've got a little bit more control. Well, not control, but a little bit more knowledge of my schedule. And so like that's been nice. But that's not something that you have all the time. So you've got to be just kind of ready to roll and ready to go from day to day.
Absolutely, absolutely. Whereas contractors, we might have, selected this and that, but again, we're missing out on the benefits that the union has, workers' comp, that security, so that's crazy. So, what other departments have you worked in besides at the opera?
So I've also worked with Theater Under the Stars, and I've worked with the Houston Ballet, and also through Local 51, we work with various different conventions and like trade shows that come through. So a lot of stuff that happens at George R. Brown Convention Center and at NRG Park. One of the things that we got a chance to do that was really cool is we did the Super Bowl when it was here in Houston. Super Bowl 51, which was kind of cool because we're Local 51. So, you know, we get to do a lot of different things. I'm most often working probably with props or with electrics, though I work with carps quite a bit too. So occasionally sound.
Do you have a preference on departments you like most, or you like them all?
One of the things that I like most is when I get to work with my hands. So if I get to make a prop or if I get a scenic painting call, I especially enjoy those. But a lot of the time, it's a like a road show that's coming through, so you're not making a lot of the stuff. You are loading in the show and you're doing the show and loading out the show. So that's fun too, just because I really enjoy the theater and being around all aspects of production. So I don't. There isn't really a department that I think that I dislike working in. I do tend to work in electrics or props most often. Like I've run Spotlight a few times for the ballet, so that's always a treat whenever I get to do that, just because it's a little different from what I usually do because I'm working with the opera so much on props.
Now, being that you have experience working in not various venues, and you're going to have to be working sometimes with different crew members at times.
Oh yes, different venue, different job, different set of tools, different people. Could be, if you're on a crew for a show, you'll work with some of the same people, but it's not all the time. And if you've got a schedule where you're bouncing around, you might work with 5 different crews of people in a week, but after a while, you get to know some of the people, and so it's not, for a while, it's like all new people every day, but once you start to know people, it gets more manageable when you're like, oh, okay, hey, I recognize you. I've seen you there. I saw you at this last work site.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. Your production family, you know what I'm saying? Even if you don't talk to them every day, when you see them, you're like, oh, like, at least it's so and so. All right, we got a good team.
Yeah.
So, what kind of things would you say, on average, is helpful for you and your team to have to make it a successful gig, no matter what the venue?
Patience, because if there are things that a lot of times you have things that just go swimmingly and it's great and it's just wonderful, but then there's also those days where things don't go exactly according to plan. And when that happens, it's good if you have a group that can not flip out about it, and if they can have kind of the presence of mind to like take a breath, step back, and go like, all right, okay, how can we approach this? And having a group of people that's willing to, collaborate and listen does a really big amount to help everybody.
Yeah. Because especially in live sound, you are on crunch time, you know what I'm saying? So you have to address whatever it is with a clear of mind and just ratify it as quick as possible.
It's live theater, live production. There's not really often a chance at a do-over. So if something doesn't go quite right, you just have to be able to roll with it.
Oh, man. Have there been instances where you've had to troubleshoot instances or ratify mistakes, even if it wasn't, maybe somebody new came by and you had to go and save them real fast?
I mean, yeah, that happens. And part of that is if you have people that are new working with you, you make sure to check in with them, kind of get a baseline of their general knowledge, and figure out, hey, do you need to keep a closer eye or whatnot? One of the things that we're actually hopefully going to start soon with Local 51 that will help with that kind of knowledge base thing is we qualified recently for a grant from through the county from AFL-CIO, the American Federation of Labor, and that's for creating an apprenticeship program. So this is something that's going to be able to allow us to help increase and kind of a bit more refine the knowledge base and the skills of people coming in to us that may or may not have a theatrical background, may or may not have a live production background. So I think that's going to help us out a whole lot. So like right now we do a lot of on the job kind of check in, like, hey, do you know your knots? Do you know stage right and stage left? So we're hoping to beef that up and, make that a little clearer of a process and help us do a better job assessing where people are at and making sure that we're sending out the best, because that's part of one of the reasons why clients come to Local 51 is they know that they're going to get qualified people. And so this is something that's going to help us make sure that we can deliver on that reputation.
Oh, that would have been so nice to have back when I was first stagehanding, man. That would have been so nice. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. Oh, well, I learned with the LD screaming at me. It's okay.
One of those School of Hard Knocks situations.
Yeah,
you can learn that way, but
yeah,
if we don't have to do that.
No. I coil cable just fine. I'm not going to break the data. I promise. So, do you have a different workflow if you go into different venues? Like, for example, doing the pop-up events like at George R. Brown versus doing your theater venues?
So, each of the contracts that we work under specifies exactly how long we can work in between breaks. And that does vary slightly from contract to contract. Most of our contracts make it so that we can't go longer than 5 hours without having a meal break.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever you're working, because we're protected by contracts, we know we're going to be able to get those meal breaks.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that happens is that the employer and the union build in like a 15-minute break kind of halfway in between that 5-hour chunk of time.
Mm-hmm.
And that really helps. Having those 15-minute breaks really is essential because it helps everybody take a step back, give a little time to reset, use the bathroom, get some water, get a snack. If they need to step outside, they can do that. And it kind of helps things flow better because it helps, temperaments and just it helps the workday. So that is a pretty standard kind of thing. Like sometimes you don't get the coffee break; those aren't necessarily in the contract, but they're more of something that the employer is aware that they're going to get a better product if their people that they're using aren't completely run into the ground. So
right.
People need a minute.
Yeah, for sure.
So the thing that does change from venue to venue is you might have kind of slightly different policies, and it's a different place to work, so you've got to know where things are. So that does kind of impact the rhythm a little bit, because if you've got people that aren't familiar with the venue, things take a little longer because you got to figure out where things are.
Oh yeah. Been there, man. But then once you hit those venues again, it's like going to someone's friend's house. You're like, oh, okay, it's that way, man. Vending machine that way. Good bathroom that way.
Yeah, and so you look around and you're like, all right, that person doesn't know where we're going. Hey, we're going over here. This is where coffee is, or this is where the restrooms are, or that sort of thing. So you kind of see it and you catch it.
Mm-hmm. Have there been setup, different kind of setups, at George R. Brown, maybe you're not doing, curtains, backdrop curtains like you would for the theater. Maybe you're working with trusses or something like that.
So with a lot of what we do at George R. Brown is meeting rooms. And so for that, there's a kind of different set of skills. So you might still have some lights on truss, and there may be some like just kind of masking curtains, but nothing, you don't have a fly system or anything like that. So there's just kind of some different elements. You'll have like kind of a smaller sound system set up for that one room, and it's definitely a more limited, like narrowed focus of thing, because it's just kind of the bare bones of what this employer has contracted with their clients to be able to provide, because there's a variety of different speakers that will be using the same space. So it's not like set up specifically. It's more of providing an area that they can get their message across.
I'll tell you, girl, I've worked in situations where it was like 100 square foot, not 100 square foot, but I mean, it was like an apartment size room, and they had this PA blasted. And I was just back there. I'm like, oh my God, am I going to make it out of here alive? Like, have you ever been in situations where you were there for show call and you saw things going on that you were like, maybe I would have done this differently?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times when you are doing a convention, the people that set up the rooms, the room operators are from the crew of the people that set up the rooms. So they try to make it so that the people that set things up end up, operating. That's not like, that doesn't always happen, but that's the ideal to avoid some of what you're talking about. And if, you're the operator and something isn't quite right, you make an adjustment. The issue that usually happens is you wind up with, so you can set all the levels you want, but if you have a presenter that doesn't understand how to use a microphone, there are adjustments that need to be made. Because you'll have some people that, practically eat the mic, and so you have to, like, bring things down just so you don't blow everybody out. Or you might have somebody who's, they've got handheld and they don't know that they have to actually hold it near their mouth. They've got it, way down by their waist, and you've got to, like, inch everything up and just carefully, because if you hit that point too far, then you're going to get that feedback.
Oh, God. Oh, wireless. Oh my God.
Even wired, because if the mic is at the lectern, and the person steps away from the lectern,
yeah,
the mic doesn't move with them.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, you can't hear me?"
Oh my God. Oh my goodness.
So there's definitely some adjustment for the live person, the person factor.
Yeah. I mean, and like, well, your background being in theater, you know what I'm saying? But I mean, for us, we have live and studio, but it is such a different workflow kind of thing, you know what I'm saying? But what is it in particular about live theater production that just draws to you? That just made you really want to devote to that specifically?
One of the things that I particularly like about live theater or live opera, live ballet, is the ephemeral nature of each moment, because you never get the same show twice, and you end up, you might have a different cast from one night to another. You might have a sub in that had to happen because maybe somebody's sick or whatever. And you also have a different audience each night. So you don't necessarily know how they're going to react. Maybe the applause will be longer in this one section. Maybe they'll just be in awe and they won't even start applauding. And you have to be ready to, roll with that and go like, okay, maybe we don't have this blackout be quite as long as it was before. Or you have something like what happened at the Hobby Center last night during the during the final number of Chicago, their Chicago performance, where the power for the entire block goes out. So, the power came back on, and they, were able to get lights back, but the sound system didn't come back up. So there were only, 4 minutes left of the show or whatnot. The blackout, the power outage only lasted for maybe, I think it was under a minute is what I heard. But, not everything comes right back up. So they finished the show, but it just was unamplified, which, having voices be unamplified isn't necessarily the end of the world. From working in opera, I'm used to those performers don't use mics. So everything that happens is their voices projecting. So it just kind of depends on what training people have and what they're able to do. So, like I said, they finished the show, that old saying, the show must go on.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, it did.
And that, my friends, is the real tea. The show must go on. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
It was my pleasure. I'm glad I got to come and talk to you a little bit about this. Did you have any other questions for me?
Yes, I wanted to ask you if you have any last little bit of advice for anyone who's interested in pursuing in production.
So if people are interested in working in theater production, they can get used to working with their hands, because it's often a very physical job. And if somebody wants to start with look into getting involved with IATSE in particular, they would need to call our hiring hall and talk to somebody there about filling out paperwork, seeing about talking to the business agent, and just kind of seeing. It helps if there's some prior familiarity and, skill with theater and familiarity with live production. We have people come to us from kind of all different walks of life. We've had former electricians come in. We've had former Teamsters. We've had people that are just looking for something and they find a home with us. But we also have a lot of people come from, like, maybe some people come from a college background where they've learned how to do this. But if people are interested, it also helps to just kind of have a knowledge of the theater. So seeing as many things as they can, so they see kind of what options are out there. Coming up in the summer, Miller Outdoor Theater in particular does a wide variety of live performances. And if you look at the schedule for Miller Outdoor Theater, you can see a little bit of everything, because typically the ballet goes out there, the opera goes out there, Theater Under the Stars goes out there, along with all of these other smaller arts groups like the Camera and other smaller, dance and various genres of music go out there. And it's all free. So that's a really good way to start kind of figuring out what people might be interested in.
Yeah, that, and go support some local artists, you know what I'm saying? I mean, great way to network, to meet these people, and you never know, working with them eventually. That's wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for joining us and sharing all this wealth of knowledge, man.
It's my pleasure. I took maybe a different route to get here. Did a little bit of that 5-year hiatus for teaching, but I like where I've gotten to.
I feel that, man. Production is where it's at, man. Whether you're in theater, sound, carps, lighting, it's where it's at, man.
Yep.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us this week, and we'll talk to you next week. Peace.